You can't grow a successful business if you are not obsessed. And so I've changed the word balance for obsessed because there is no such thing as balance. The definite purpose for me is the exceptional life. The exceptional life is winning in all of these areas. I'm going to win in my business and my money. I'm going to win in my marriage and my family. I'm going to win in my faith. I'm going to win in my fitness, my health, my mental health. I'm going to win in lifestyle. But it's not like, I'm pouring over here and then like I got to take it away and put it over here. And it's like, no, I got to go all in all the time in all of them.
Welcome, everybody. You are watching the next episode of Construction MF'ers, whether you're watching us on YouTube or hearing us on your favorite podcast channel. I got a great guest today. I'm excited to bring on a serial entrepreneur, a friend of mine, someone I've done his show. I've learned a lot about him. His name is Chaz Wolfe, and I'm excited to share his journey with you. My name is Scott Pieper. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mobilization Funding, and let's introduce Chaz. Chaz, how you doing?
Scott, man, I appreciate that. You're so kind in the way that you bring on somebody. I feel great now. Just I'm ready to I'm ready to do the thing. I need you to introduce me everywhere.
I was told all I have to do is smile when I say someone's name, and then everybody likes it and they feel good and you're in. So that's all I do.
Get you a little, what's that? That's the old Carnegie win friends and influence people, right?
Yeah, I said, well, if the opposite of that is frowning, I can imagine that it probably works, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Might as well hit it.
Doesn't
hurt.
That's right.
But I'm glad it worked with you.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I'm excited to talk to you, man. When you and I first met and we talked and I did your show, and we talked before and talked after. There's a few things that really resonated with what you are about and how you go about doing it that I think is important. And I really wanted to have you on to talk about that because most of our audience, as we discussed, they're not all construction MF'ers, but there's a lot of MF'ers and a lot of people in a lot of industries. But what we all have in common is a journey of some kind. We're hustling. Most are trying to gain either progress in their businesses or they're trying to gain progress inside of someone else's business and move up to help their families. And your story about how you started your business originally, executed through that journey, had some exits along the way, came back into the entrepreneurial space a few times, not only as a business owner, but also as a way to introduce Gathering the Kings, which I want to talk about. But I think before we talk about Gathering the Kings, I think it's going to be even better for people to understand how you got your experience to even talk about the things that you discussed there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. The journey, like you said, is one that matters. And I think that the destination is a cool part and we're all after it. But if we can enjoy the journey, like you're saying, then that's the real ticket. Yeah.
So how did you get your first entrepreneurial start? What was the beginning?
Well, it depends on if you count the hustling as a kid, which I do. Yes, I do. Because I do.
Oh yeah.
I sold all kinds of stuff as a kid, candy bars and popcorn and door-to-door lawn services. And my wife jokes about it now because she references back to my lawn business. I'm like, hey, look, I had invoices. Okay. I was 10, 12, 13, 14. I had invoices handwritten. Here you go. Pay me the money. So it was real. Okay. But in all seriousness, I was 24 years old when I purchased my first franchise. And that's kind of where it began as far as like a huge time frame investment, money investment. I was all in on entrepreneurship. Before that, I was in sales, which was still, I ran my team like a business. I was very entrepreneurial, very leadership centered. I was always trying to just press into the best version of myself, press into the best version of me as a leader. I was trying to run my team as an organization and as a unit, as a business, even though I was inside of another business. So it's great that you have listeners that are maybe in that position. That's possible. And you can make a lot of money doing that if you think like an owner. And I think that the ownership mentality is kind of what helped me through that. But eventually that led me to doing my own thing because that's where my thought and my desires are. So yeah, 24 years old, I purchased an existing edible arrangements franchise. And I left over six-figure a year sales leadership role, corporate job, benefits. I was a top producer. For all intents and purposes, everybody thought I was crazy. And I am. Still am. And I'm okay with that. But yeah, that turned into, one location that year, 12-ish years ago, to 7 locations in 3 states, 65-ish employees by the time I was 29. and it was a whirlwind. And I'd like to say, I mean, your introduction was fantastic, and yeah, there was a lot of success there, but there was a lot of tornadoes inside of that I was creating. I was just doing a show with someone else on my pod earlier this morning, and he was like, "Look, man, I was a what do you say, a train wreck that just was wobbling, and no one could see it happening. It just hadn't happened yet, you know." And I resonated with that because it was like we were just barely hanging on to the tracks. It felt like at some points, and so that's a little bit of the background. Of course, we've done some real estate. We've got several real estate companies. I have a remodeling company now in Kansas City. We can talk maybe about that a little bit. It's residential. I know you do a lot of commercial stuff, but we've grown that from 0 to 7 figures in 7 months, in the first 7 months. And of course, we're trying to hit big numbers in that. And I built that from top down. I don't spend a whole lot of time in that business because of my experience. Same things that I'm helping other entrepreneurs do. So I think we can get into all this.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny? You mentioned the pod you're doing this morning, and that effect you're having, right? And I was just literally last week was sitting with a good friend of mine, and we were talking through some different business stuff that I was working through here at Mobilization Funding and trying to get some of his advice. And he said to me, he goes, "Scott, you know, he always gives great advice on business, but it always talks about my personal side and family side." And he said to me, he goes, "You know, man, you can never mistake the wake that you're leaving behind. And like you are creating a wake, I promise you. Like, don't think you're not for one second." Because people get accustomed to the wake, you learn how to ride the wake, but there's a wake. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, but you have to know that you're creating that effect, whether it's just your journey, whether it's your head down, whether it's just the sheer force that you're exerting either on yourself or others, or just the fact that they have to live and watch it. And I was like, wow, you know what? I didn't see that. Because a lot of times you think of that push that you put on somebody, but there's a force being generated off of you at all times that your family has to see and live with, and they don't get to change that.
Nope. No, they don't. Yeah, it's spot on, man. And that can cause problems with relationships, marriage, children, other friendships or family, coworkers, partners. Like it really what you're asking for the listener inside of that is self-awareness. Because if you're an intense dude, like I said, I wasn't just crazy. I am still crazy, and that's okay. I'm self-aware about it. I know how I make decisions. I'm moving fast all the time. There is a wake behind me for sure. And I kind of use it as a filter, because if you can't ride the wake, we ain't a good fit. But at the same time too, I can't just, arrogantly, hey, this is what we're doing. And I take no, concern of anybody else to try to maybe adjust or make the wake easier to ride. You know what I mean? Right. I can't just fully do it on my terms only. I mean, I think some entrepreneurs do, but I'm all in. I'm just all in on collaboration, not necessarily that Chaz has it all figured out,
Yeah. And he made a point too. He goes like, he said, "Look, Scott, it doesn't mean you're doing something negative or something wrong, but it's hard to be around sometimes. If you're someone who's trying to do something a certain way, or you've rationalized doing things a way that you want to do them, or a volume of things you want to do, or the way in which you want to do them, and you watch someone else doing it differently, whether that's positive or negative for them, if there's a comparison going on, and they perceive that you're highlighting something that they've rationalized they didn't want to do or shouldn't do or couldn't do or is okay not to do, that's a wake in itself. Everyone needs to make their own decisions. Doesn't mean anyone's doing something right or wrong. It just means that's a wake. And when you have like young daughters, and your wife gets you because she's been with you for decades, and she's already figured out what she likes and doesn't like, but your daughters, they might not have figured that out yet. They might not like the fact that you're just putting this like pressure on them, whether purposely or not. And so that might be some of the headbutts. And I'm like, yes, and as your kids are not 6, 10, 12 years old anymore, they start to become teenagers. They do a good job of vocalizing the stuff they don't like.
Yeah. My daughter just turned 10, my oldest, and I can already see like she has changed. The way she carries herself has changed. Her facial structure is changing, and she's always been opinionated, but she, and we do affirmations, and she's strong. Like I'm grooming her to be the best version of her, not necessarily anything that I need, but something that God made her to be. Right. And you're right. If that's anything like me, I'm gonna have to do a little dance, because it can't just be full blown train coming at you all the time.
That's right. So speaking of faith, tell me how one of the things I admire about you is you speak about your faith, or you're just not afraid to bring it up. It's not like a hat on your tattoo on your forehead, but
Sure.
if it comes up, you have no problem speaking about it, or just it's in general.
Yeah.
Um, Talk about that. Where did you get your faith? When did you start incorporating it into your business and your life in a meaningful way that was at least outward facing?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that you would bring this up because, well, first off, the faith sticker, the Jesus sticker, the Christian flag, or any other religion flag for that matter, to me, it is it's unrelatable. And you can do you, and that's fine, and I'm going to do me, but I'm much more impacted by people who do things that draw me in. And I watch what they do and I go, I wonder why he does it that way. I wonder why Scott took the time to put together a thoughtful gift after being on my show. Not me on his show. He thanked me for being on my show. And the intentionality in that is the same intentionality that you're talking about, is how I'm living in a specific way is a reflection of what I believe. Now, that belief can be faith oriented. That could beliefs in my marriage, beliefs in how I think businesses or team should be built, or how humans should be treated. And so I kind of see it all as one. And if I'm authentically being me, I would talk about any of these things if I truly believe them. And so if someone's going to bring up faith specifically related to, how I'm created, or who created me, or maybe where we're going after this life, then absolutely, I love that conversation. But I'm not walking around with a sticker on my face, because I believe that my actions speak so loudly that you can't actually hear what I'm saying. Even though I have a podcast, even though I talk a lot sometimes for a living, I would actually rather let my actions speak. And so it's interesting that you would bring it up, because that's everything that you've experienced with me is how I have it written in my daily visualization, that I act these ways. And if and when that spurs someone to ask questions, I confidently and freely share, is literally word for word what it says.
Yep. And that's what you have to do. And by the way, that's in my faith, which I know you share as well, in the Christian faith, that's what you're called to do. That's it. Be influential. And when asked, offer.
Yeah, exactly. And there's I'm a personality expert. I've studied psychology and personalities for a long, long time. We've got some cool tools that we use with our clients, but some of this we can break down a personality, someone who's going to do well in sales versus someone who's a computer programmer. Take those two people, those two personalities, and put them into a faith and the declaration of what that looks like for them. And it's going to come out, it's going to manifest itself differently. That salesperson naturally is going to be extroverted, and they're going to want to persuade naturally, and they're going to want to talk to people, and they're going to want to go out of their way to find out what you believe, because they also have a belief and they want to share it with you. The introvert's probably way more likely to just act and wait for a conversation to be brought for them. So I think it's all relative to how God made us, And so God made me as an introvert. I'm a learned extrovert. And so if I'm being honest to the way that I think I'm designed, is that a conversation that's brought to me, I really like that. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have a problem bringing it up on my own, but this back and forth that we're talking about is, I think, how I'm wired. It's how God made me.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because people are always like, "Hey, what's your if you're gonna do any kind of speaking or come out?" They're like, "What do you like?" I'm like, you know what? I love Q&A. Like, I'd much rather do a question and answer than I would some kind of prepared talk, so to speak. And I think you just hit the nail on the head from the extrovert, introvert, sales side.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned, I think it's really cool in business. I think a lot of people kind of struggle to figure where their lane is. As an owner of a business, there's a lot of lanes, right? And you got to be in them all, but you're going to be good at only some.
Mm-hmm.
So I read a book called The E-Myth, which I think was an amazing book, and it helped outline a lot of stuff. And, a lot of entrepreneurs come in through the sales side. And for those folks that haven't read The E-Myth, it's a great book, but basically in the gist of it, there's three types of people. You have the sales, you have financial, and you have technician. And a lot of people get into business, especially in construction, as a technician. You're an electrician, you're a plumber, you're a roofer. You work for somebody bad one day, you're like, forget this, I'm going to do it on my own. Next thing you know, you're in business, and now you got to worry about all three. Yeah. But a lot of entrepreneurs come in through the sales side as well, and very few come in through the financial side. I'm going to gather from what you just said that you came in on the sales side.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
How did you pivot to fill those other two buckets? I saw you smile almost as if you might have read the book. Have you read the book as well?
I have read the book. Michael Gerber, the author, he was on my podcast, and his show comes out here in 2 weeks. So
Oh, nice.
you
There you
should
go.
check
Well,
that
everyone,
out.
you've
It's
got to listen to that.
yeah. Yeah. So yes, it's a great book. It breaks down these three areas, but it's so much more too. So go ahead with your lead here.
Yeah. So my question to you is, how did you, coming in on the sales side, feeling comfortable with that, learn the other side, the technical side of the business of edible arrangements, the financial side of the business, edible arrangements? Like, where did you start to figure out, like, woof, like, I'm pretty good at the sales side. I'm okay at one of the other two, and the other one, I'm just like kind of lost.
Don't have a clue. Yeah. It's a great question, and I'll give you the answer for edible arrangements because that was my first business, and this filter is what led me to that business. But then I'll also give you the example of the construction business that I started with a couple of partners that I came in, and I would say even above those three. I didn't come in from any of those angles, I feel like. And so the salesperson in me knew that like any business operates on sales. Like that's just the end of the day. Not that sales solves everything, but that's what a salesperson believes. Just more sales, we'll figure it out.
Right.
And there's some truth in that, but there's also a train wreck in that potentially. And so the technical piece for me, as I was looking at roofing companies or HVAC companies or food companies, or I mean, I had looked at businesses for nearly 2 years to purchase, franchise, not franchise, furniture, service. Like I looked at it all. And what pushed me away from a lot of the construction related services is because I didn't do them. Technically, I didn't know how to. And at that time, I didn't know how to build a business around something that I personally myself couldn't do or learn. And not that I said I couldn't learn those things, but I felt a whole lot more confident with going to an edible arrangements university and cutting fruit and putting it in a basket that makes it look like flowers. I was like, oh, I can figure that out. Like, surely,
Got it.
So it was just a confidence around the technical piece, but it was the sales and marketing background that I had that was really like, look, I can grow this individual location. This is a gift business. There are other businesses that need gifts. Of course, we sell to consumers, individuals, but there are other large companies like construction companies that want to do end of the year Christmas gifts for their clients and or fill in the blank, birthday gifts, anniversary gifts, whatever. I can pick up the phone and call people and sell my product B2B. I can do that. So I had to get into the business. I learned how to cut fruit. I quickly built a team, which I already knew how to do, and try to elevate myself quickly to that skill set that you're talking about, to where I was networking and trying to grow the business from a top line perspective. And then the top line grew by me building new locations or buying, acquiring other locations eventually, as well.
Did you know the financial side? Did you understand the numbers of a business and how to finagle that and what metrics to pull and what things to pay attention to, KPIs, what stuff not, what stuff to, how to influence each and the other? Or was that something that just sort of you had to learn on the fly?
Yeah, I would have, if you had asked me that question back then, I would say, I understand. But the understanding that I have today obviously is much more mature.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little scenario. I remember the business broker that was helping me look at all these companies, and I'm 20, probably maybe 3 at that time, 24 eventually when I made initiated the purchase. And so I'm 23 years old. This guy's, probably in his 60s. He had run several businesses and he's just really helpful. Very, very mentoring in this process for me. And I'm just all ambition, all excitement, got to get out of my corporate job. I got to figure this out. We're looking at companies, but I did it for a long period of time. He knew I wasn't just trying to make a rash decision. But somewhere in there, we were evaluating a business and I asked him to explain to me what the P&L was. That first company that I purchased for $400,000. At 24 years old, I made a $400,000 business purchase. And I had no idea a few months before that how to read a P&L.
Not one.
But to anybody who's listening who maybe is like that or is like, oh my goodness, I didn't have a problem asking. In that moment, I'm like, hey, can you just explain this to me? Because guess what? After he went through, I'm like, oh, in, out, boom, I got it.
Yeah.
off we go.
And at least you know what to start paying attention to. And then it's
Yeah.
easy when you're looking at how the decisions you make on a daily basis
Yeah.
influence the P&L. When you
Yeah.
understand the P&L, now you can actually make, you can make decisions off of that. You can influence it.
Yeah. Yeah. So to make this maybe a little bit more relatable for the key metrics per se for a construction business, like we pay attention obviously to sales, but inside of that, it's, we're trying to end with a certain margin. So there's estimating and sales process tactics that we have to adhere to make sure that we can get there. There's, the labor control of figuring out and negotiating with subs. There's the ability to execute and actually hold to a budget. There's all kinds of components inside of a project and or a business that has multiple projects where you're trying to not only be diligent, but trying to achieve the target of winning. And usually in a business, that means you're making money. And you can define that with a different type of percentage margin of profit. But that's the ideal. So even back then with edible arrangements, I had to control the controllables. I couldn't control my rent. It was what it was. Like I signed up for the rent. I had to kind of finagle maybe a new location or a different location based on that amount, but it was fixed. Utilities for the most part were fixed. So all these things, I'm looking at the P&L, like you're saying, and I'm going, well, I can't really control any of this. The principle of controlling what I can control is important. So, okay, so it's fruit or cost of goods. It's labor, little bit of delivery service, fuel and cost of goods, or service around vehicles and stuff like that. But really what I'm talking about is I got two major components. How do I tie those two things to the performance of my store manager so that way they're in alignment with me? And we're both thinking constantly about the things that we can actually control in the business that, can slip away from us really quickly and we make no money, which happens a ton in construction. If you, as the owner, don't have eyes on it, and then on top of that, you don't have your folks tied to that, ideally with their compensation, but if not, at least some sort of a regular meeting focus, money gets away from you. And then boom, you're not in a good place and Scott won't lend to you.
You're right. No, I mean, those metrics and numbers in any business, construction especially, you have to know what they are and influence them on a daily, weekly basis and then track them and then have your key people. And I love what you said. If you tie your superintendent, your store manager, your project manager, your accounting team, whoever it is, to the same metrics that are going to make the team and the business successful,
Right.
You will be key. And I think that's one thing a lot of people don't do. They talk about how important that is, but if you can tie their performance and compensation to it, a bonus to it, incentives to it, you can create dramatic impact in things that are super important to the business and the success of those projects, which only you're going to turn into a better product, a better customer, a better outcome, a better team, a happier team, less stress. And so it's that last little piece. If you just tie those compensation buckets there, you can really do two things. You can make the impact, but I think you can also prove that it's important to you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's just full alignment. And now we're even on a deeper principle. You can find it in Think and Grow Rich. We're talking about the mastermind principle. It's the the harmony, the two minds or more working together in harmony unto a definite purpose, unto the execution of that definite purpose. And so how are we? First off, what is the definite purpose? Well, ideally it's margin, but there you can have a more holistic. We want to help people, and we want to help 100 families this year, or whatever the more the feel good target is. But at the end of the day, you're trying to make money. Okay, fine. So what's the target? Are we in alignment? Do all the pieces line up so that we are in harmony, so that we are incentivized to actually be in harmony?
Mm-hmm. Another great book. I know we talked about this on your podcast too. That's a really influential book for me. I still to this day recite my paragraph, which is long, takes probably a minute to go through, but it's so easy to do. And it's just a great idea of the principle of the mastermind, which I think is a great segue to what you're doing now. So, if, you mentioned the importance of, pushing the limits, but having balance at home, understanding your principles at home, pushing the limits, but you have to be successful in business. There's a lot of talk out there about balance, but can you give us your opinion and how you balance being a great dad, a great husband, a great businessman, a great leader in your team? How do you keep all those things together, and what do you do to make sure it works?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question. I've spent a lot of time on this personally, and then not only challenging members of our mastermind, but then asking hundreds of podcast guests like you I want to build a little context here for the listener, because this is a really important thing. I think this is so far over to the really important side, and most people don't connect the dots. They're missing the power in exactly what you're setting up here. So I really want to spend just a few minutes here. The context currently that they have two options. So the listener has two options currently. They are listening to a grinded out guru who's telling them to put your head down and don't think about anything else. Put everything behind your target, which feels like money and achievement, and that it's the only way to have a singular to win is to have a singular focus, which is true. But there's the way that they've set that up for you is that you basically are rushing and hurrying constantly, always anxious, and it doesn't work. I promise you it doesn't work. I'm a hustler. I'm a grinder. I will outwork most individuals that I speak to. Okay. But yet you have the opposite end. The only other option that they have is don't grind, take it easy. Your family's worth it. Like, just spend all your time with your family. And by doing this, it will not get you the results that you're looking for. You can't grow a successful business if you are not obsessed. And so I've changed the word balance for obsessed, because there is no such thing as balance. Like, think about a wave. You know, we're boogie boarding, we're surfing, whatever. The very balance of being on that wave happens for what? 0.2% of the time. Like, and our focus is to try to be to that moment. No. It's all the work that goes into getting there. It's all the work to writing it in. And like, there's just so much more to the process. And my opinion is that we have to be obsessed. I can go all in. That's what I mean by being obsessed. I don't mean in a negative connotation where I put everything behind it. Although Napoleon Hill gives us this principle. I have to put everything, it's old language, but he says back of the target, back of the goal. I have to put everything behind it. And so I've just changed the definite purpose. The definite purpose for me is the exceptional life. The exceptional life is winning in all of these areas. I'm going to win in my business and my money. I'm going to win in my marriage and my family. I'm going to win in my faith. I'm going to win in my fitness, my health, my mental health. I'm going to win in lifestyle. In those 5 areas that we call, dimensions of kingship, I can win in all of them. But it's not like, I'm pouring over here and then like I got to take it away and put it over here. And it's like, no, I got to go all in all the time in all of them. Now we have that context. How do I actually do that? Because you're right. Today, literally today on my schedule, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. today, there's like 30 minutes in between all these meetings. And I'm going to try to grab a piece of food and maybe use the restroom. That's like all in obsession on my business. Not every day works like that though. Where some days I get an hour break in the middle or whatever, and I'm like down, playing with my kids, or I'm outside shooting, the bow with my son. There's moments and seasons, right? So again, going back to maybe a newer construction owner, or even a worker, like you're in the newer process of building something up, you're just going to have to press in. You're going to have to press hard. Maybe you don't take weekends. Like maybe you need to put those weekends to your business. Right. But I still have to fill the cup of my marriage and my family and my faith. Like, that doesn't mean that I don't read my Bible and I don't take my wife on a date and I don't spend time with my kids. What that looks like, because I'll give you the scenario. I'll give you the exact year, actually. It was 2016. I had 4 locations of Edible Arrangements. I was in the process of opening up number 5, 6, and 7, all in 3 different states. 2 were brand new stores. 1 was an acquisition. Literally opened all 3 of those, 2 grand openings and an acquisition of an almost $1 million location, all within 3-week period of time. Now, 6 months before that, what you don't know in this story, outside of my 4 locations, I had gone back to a W-2 sales job. What? I was literally leading a sales team from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. while on my phone running 4 franchises. My wife is pregnant with our second child. I'm up 4 a.m. to 1 a.m., like the next 1 a.m. I'm getting 3-4 hours a week. And this went, or a day. And this went for like 9 weeks in a row. And I just plowed through. I was in communication with my wife. She knew what I was doing, because when I got home, I had to work on the 2. I had paperwork and permits and construction happening in 2 locations in 2 different states. I had an acquisition happening, so there was paperwork and agreements and legal stuff happening. All the stuff with the franchisor, like it was a ton. I don't know if I would recommend that, actually. But when I look at that period of time, I was in communication with my wife. Was I spending less time with her? Yes. But was I still in communication with her? Was I still trying to fill her cup in ways? I remember that Valentine's Day that year. Valentine's Day is a big day for Edible Arrangements. You don't see me for like 3 days. And oftentimes those 3 days I'm up straight. It was like 4 a.m. I remember I have a connection with a person at Costco. I swing by Costco at like 4 a.m. to pick up like 100 flats of strawberries, like filled like 3 vehicles. Okay. And I see like a flower plant thing. I'm like, throw it on there. At 4 a.m., I swing into the house. It's all dark. I put the plant on the deal. I write her a little note. I hop in the shower and I go back to the store. I didn't even see her that day, but I took the opportunity to be obsessed with her in that moment. Yeah. Now, there's been times where I haven't done that and I didn't do it well. There's been a lot of times actually where I was all in on the business and I was not doing the marriage, the family, the fitness, the faith thing well. There's plenty of times. And I don't think that we're trying to be after perfection or balance. I think that what we're trying to do is go all in constantly every single day. How can I level up? How can I get better? How can I become the best version of me so that I can show up in my business and my money and my marriage and my kids' life? Like I want to show up all the time as the best version. And that takes obsession. I'm just like all in and I got to bring it every single day. Otherwise, what am I here for? That's just my opinion.
Well, you made a good point though up front that there's 5 things. There's not 50. You can't do them all, and you can't do all the things that everyone else is doing. You got to pick your 5, and I think the first step in that process is not landing on the 5 things that are important to you. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 2, who knows what it is. But the way to do that is you got to figure out what you're going to say no to. You got to figure out what you're doing now that you're not going to do anymore so that you can create the time to be all in when you need to be on the things that are important. I think too often people are trying to do 15 things. And the other thing is, and you hit the nail on the head with your story, it can't be every day. It's not going to be balanced. It might be like, maybe you balance the month, right? Maybe you balance the week, but it's not daily. Like it is not daily. You're not going to get a daily balance. And just because your buddies are playing Wednesday afternoon golf, they might be on a different path. They might have different cares. That might be one of their top 5 things, right? But it's not yours. So you can't compare unless you're all working on the same exact focus. And so I think you make a great point about that.
I want to highlight what you're saying because you're really giving really good juice here. And I want the listeners to pay attention to you because you're giving it to them raw. That lifestyle category, I say it's what brings you joy. And that could be a personal, maybe it's golf. Maybe it's a family vacation. Maybe it's a new toy that you buy. I don't know. Maybe it's you helping other people and being philanthropic. But to your point, you can't do them all. You can't do them all at the same time, at least. And so what I have noticed is that you have to exchange some of those things. I really like certain things by myself, maybe because I'm an introvert and I want to go sit in a tree stand, let's say. But I can't go sit in the tree stand every single day of hunting season anymore. Sorry.
Right.
Guess what? You're married. You got kids. Like, unless you want to not be married.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So it doesn't mean that you give up those things necessarily. It just may be for a season, or maybe I hunt a couple of times, fill up my cup, and then I can also do the things that are important to my wife. And so that's how you're, doing multiple things. It's going, okay, well, what's important to me? What's important to the people that are around me? And how do I focus on it? How do I bring it to my forefront every single day? You have the paragraph. I used to do the exact same thing. I just went through a program earlier this year that took that and like expounded it into like 3 pages, and it takes me like 14 minutes to read. So we should definitely talk about that. Me and
I'd
you.
love to.
But what I'm saying here is that it is possible. And yes, you do have to pick a couple of things like what Scott's saying, but those things, they work together. Like right now it's okay. What brings me joy, but how can I maybe do that with my kids?
Right. That's right.
That's both right. And.
So this is a great segue into what I really wanted to ultimately talk to you about too, is talk about gathering the kings. What is it? How did you decide to do it?
Yeah.
And where are you taking it? And how does the podcast incorporate with it and the whole sequence? Talk about all those, because you've had a lot of success, I think, certainly with your podcast. You've shot a lot of episodes. You've gotten very good at it. I know personally it's not easy to do, and it's not easy to get guest after guest and conversation after conversation. And so the commitment to that alone is something I would definitely give you a ton of credit for. So kudos to you on that. But talk about why you decided to do that and how that pivot came from, or maybe it wasn't a pivot, it was just an addition to, and what you're hoping to come out of it and what it is for people to learn from.
Yeah. So Gathering the Kings is a peer mastermind group for entrepreneurs that want to win in all areas and live the exceptional life. Everything that we just got done talking about. And so how we do that as a community is that we first serve entrepreneurs by taking them out of isolation. You and I had this conversation, and I'm sure you see it in all the businesses that you work with, is that, the guy or gal at the top, it's lonely at the top, quote unquote. But it doesn't have to be. And I think that we all relate to that moment, the moments that I've just described where, it's midnight, I'm filling out paperwork. I'm going off of only 3 hours of sleep. These decisions that I'm making are hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time. It affects not only just me and my family, but my future generations, the employees, like the city, like all this heaviness. And you can be a rock star. I am a rock star, but that eventually wears on you, and it's heavy.
It
and
is.
so the humility that comes eventually is that we get lowered to a place of stress, anxiety, ADHD, depression, whatever. And those things are soft, weak, and woo, especially to construction people. But I don't like ascribe to those things, but the reality is that you're alone, and we're not designed for that. So if we can get you out of isolation and into community, specifically with other people like you who are freaking winners, who are talking about stuff like this, could you imagine being in a room of 12 people like us? Like, listener, pay attention. If you could be in the room right now with Scott and I, and we hit the record button and we're done and we're just talking and we just are in friendship doing the thing in life, do you think that we kind of run fast? Do we think we kind of run hard? We got intensity, we got kids, we got family, we got goals that we're trying to hit. Like, do you think if you hung out with Scott and I on a regular basis that you would grow maybe a little bit? Yeah. It's kind of how it works. So when you step into a room like that with winners, you're naturally going to grow. But then inside of that, there's practical things, the mindset stuff that we've talked about. There's sales, there's marketing, there's, how to hire well. We have tools for all this. Like, I want you to grow your business. Sure. Okay. Come on in here. Let's show you how to run, get you out of isolation, show you how to run your business. But really what I'm after is you winning in all those areas, having that exceptional life that we've talked about. And that brings up conversations around marriage. It brings up conversations around a supportive spouse and how that friction usually happens, because guess what? You got a big driver, male or female, you got a big driver. The other one's, got to play a support role to a degree. And then it's flip-flopped at times. You got to have lanes. You got to have good communication. Like, all this stuff comes up when you're real and authentic. And that's what I've tried to create. The reason why I tried to create that is because I couldn't find it. I was part of quote unquote masterminds, and they were just group coaching or a guru teaching, which all those are fine. And I've gotten major value. I've spent a ton of money on those things. I was in a net partnership with Grant Cardone. I went to 10X headquarters. I took my whole family across the country. I built a sales team for him and Frank Kern. I was a net split partner. And I say all that to say that, like, I guess, like, the reason why it exists is because the real definition of mastermind is two minds coming together, working in harmony unto a specific goal, unto the execution of that specific goal. And I just couldn't find that anywhere. So I just was like, dude, I got to create this because I want it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's so valuable. And we could talk about that forever. And you're right, man. And it's just like, I had a great friend of mine, him and I are super close. And this story will sum up what you're talking about being in proximity with people. And it's not like-minded people. It might be just people with the same goals, like, because
Right.
those same goals are going to drive certain behaviors, which are going to create certain weaknesses, which are going to highlight certain positives and negatives, right? And so if you're around them, you start to feel like, oh, that is normal. Okay, it's normal to feel like a loser a lot, but then it's also normal to tell yourself you're not and keep going. Okay, it's also normal to be anxious. It's normal to even feel depressed. And you know what? But that's not anxiety or depression. You're just anxious, or you're just depressed. You don't have depression or anxiety. But if someone's sitting there telling you the whole time, every time you're anxious, which is totally normal, that you must have anxiety and you need to fix it. Well, maybe the anxiety is being given to you so you're aware of something that's in front of you or something you need to do. Maybe you're depressed because you're doing something wrong and you need to change the behavior. And if you're around people that can express that to you, it's a lot different than someone telling you have depression. Okay, that's just a label. And sometimes people have depression. I'm not saying depression isn't depression. I'm not saying anxiety isn't anxiety. But my story is, a friend of mine called me, and he was going through a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, look, this guy I consider one of, like, your certifiable, like, badasses. I mean, he is as fucking bad as they come. I mean, he's successful. He's driven. He's had success in everything he's tried to do. And he was anxious, or he had quote anxiety, and he had depression. And the first thing I said to him was like, well, talk to me about it. And he explained it. I said, well, I feel that way. How often do you feel? I said, I feel that way every day at some point, maybe even for sure weekly. Well, what do you do? I said, I do these affirmation exercises. I remind myself of the things I did well that day, or the things I didn't. Then I also identify, well, you know what? You said you were going to do these 5 things and you haven't done them for 5 days in a row. And you know what? You're anxious about it because you know you're supposed to do it. So that's like, and he goes, yeah, that's the same thing. I said, dude, I think you have anxiety, but you don't have a diagnosis of anxiety. You're just anxious, and depression. And dude, like that conversation, which frankly was very easy for me to have because I had to have it with someone else years earlier.
Yeah.
And so that brings up another thing. The things that you struggle through or deal with yourself, you are so keenly equipped to help somebody else about it, which is why you should always talk about those things and not hold them in.
Yeah.
And so it was just a great point you just made about like getting together around folks that are trying to do the same things so you can feel normal and you understand what is normal for the path you're on.
Yeah. Yeah.
In all
So
aspects. Big. So I think what you're doing with gathering the kings, I think is awesome. I love the purpose around it. I think it's a lot more than just making money and figuring that out. I mean, the key, here's the hack. The hack to life is if you actually do what you're supposed to do and stick to it and focus on your faith and focus on your family, you actually will receive all of it together. They all go together. You don't just get to have one. There's lots of people out there with a lot of money that are miserable. There's a lot of people out there that are a lot of happy with no money. So you got to figure out what your things are and just put your energy in them and then let time work on your side. But that's your process there, man, is spot on. I love the genesis behind it. It's not just coaching. It's not a lifestyle. And I know it's not, you didn't do it for your sole source of income or even any income. So, so anyone that's out there looking to join some type of mastermind or figure out what they can be part of, I can tell you just the research I've seen and the people I've talked to in it, it's a great avenue to go to. And I would highly suggest people look at it.
Appreciate that, Scott. Yeah. Gatheringthekings.com is an easy place to go to.
Yeah. It's a good message. And you just heard from the leader and the sole beginning of Gathering the Kings. So I think that's my sentiment to it. I don't get paid for that, and I'm not even a member of it. I've just been witness to it over the last year. So I think you guys should really check it out if that's something you're looking for. So, Chaz, what else should I have asked you that I have not talked to you about that we should know, people should know?
Good question, man. Well, I think that the message, kind of like the tie the bow on the message for entrepreneurs or key leaders in other organizations, is that you're called to be the best version of yourself. And I just really believe that. I've always believed that. And I think that ties into everything we've shared here today, whether it's, the different the dimensions of kingship. But what that should do is it should cause you to look in the mirror. It should cause you to have humility. It should cause you to want to grow and be better, not look at yourself in the mirror and be upset or dissatisfied or anxious or depressed. There's a reckoning. Where have I been? Where am I? Where am I going? Where do I want to go? And then Scott gave you some cool stuff. It's from chapter 4 in Think and Grow Rich. You can use the auto suggestion platform or psychology method to write down those things. It gives you a clear outline and you can read it to yourself every single day. I do this even with my kids, where they look in themselves every day in the mirror and they're talking the things that I want them to believe about them, because that's my role as their father, is to instill these beliefs in them that are going to help them later. The key part about what I just said even is that you might be listening right now and you're not sure what you believe, and you're not sure if you can be successful, or if maybe you're successful in one area, but you're like, I don't really know if I can have it all. Well, it starts with you just simply writing it down and feeding it to yourself. And it's exactly what we just got done talking about with Scott and auto suggestion and the reference I just made in Think and Grow Rich. But Napoleon Hill references the principle of faith, and it is this action of emotion that you get eventually. And sometimes you don't have it right away, and that's okay. Sometimes you don't know how things are going to work out. Sometimes you don't have all the answers. In fact, can we just be honest? Most times it's always like we don't have the answers. We aren't sure. And so where does that settle down for us? Is that we have to have faith. And faith is the emotional connection that I actually believe that I can have what we're after. And and that I have what it takes. And so I think that there's a component there for the listener to take away and just go, look yourself in the mirror, apply the things that you're not going to become your best version tomorrow. In fact, I'm going to be 100 years from now still working on the best version of myself, God willing.
Yeah,
So it's like
compounds.
Yeah. So there's no destination here. I want to release that from your listeners, like you and I have. We just released it, which a lot of times when you release that, there goes the depressional thoughts, there goes the anxious activities, there goes the bad mindset, because it's like, look, I've been given these sets of talents. I want to press in. I want to be the best version. I want to love well. There's some cool things that we're going to do inside of that, inside the business world, inside the money, inside the stuff, but zoom out, become the best version of yourself. The rest will work itself out.
That's right. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on, doing the show. I think you've added some great nuggets, way exceeded my expectations, which I knew was going to be good anyway. But I thought just diving into these stories and letting people understand, like, this is okay. Go get some information somewhere, wherever you seek it out. I mean, we talked about books. You and I talked about masterminds. We talked about individual conversations we had. And the cool thing is, man, when you lean into these things, which also is a filter, like you and I met this year, but I feel like I could talk to you hours. I mean, I could easily talk to you. I could talk to you about things I might not even talk to other people about. Like, it's just, you will find and connect with people that I'm just promise people, you don't have to sit alone and be anxious or depressed or wonder. Like, you just got to figure it out. And you can do that by surrounding yourself with other people who are trying to do the same things. This is the easiest way.
Yeah.
So there's the hack. Everyone's looking for a hack. There's the hack. Surround yourself with people trying to do similar things and find out you're not broken.
Yeah, that's right. And it gives you power. It's the actual power that comes from that mastermind principle. Andrew Carnegie, one of the largest entrepreneurs, one of the largest estates to be sold ever, said the single source of his success came from the mastermind principle inside of his business. He didn't know a thing about steel. And so, and I don't mean to say that like you have to be part of a group. You can be part of a group, but the mastermind principle is happening right now between Scott and I. The mastermind principle is happening between you and your spouse. This is a focus, and this is how a lot of people have done a lot of incredible things in life.
Yeah. Well, man, we're going to wrap it up there. Any last words for folks? How can everyone find you? Where do you live mostly in the social media world?
Yeah. You can find us on all the platforms, but Facebook is easy. LinkedIn is easy. GatheringTheKings.com is easy. You can find us there. Of course, our podcast, Gathering the Kings, like you said, we've had, I don't know, probably 450 or so episodes recorded in the last 23 months. So we've been hustling, and we're excited to continue to bring value to entrepreneurs, really just everywhere.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Chaz, thank you very much for joining us on the show. You guys have heard the latest episode of Construction MF'ers. If you found value in this, please share the show. Join in, find Chaz, click subscribe on Gathering the Kings, click subscribe on Mobilization Funding, and let everyone know there's a good message out there. There's other good people trying to do similar stuff, and we wish you the best, and God bless you all.